and today we're gonna take a look at the 2010 American slasher film called Chain Letter. As the film opens, a woman is seen listening to a news broadcast, which reveals that a detective who was investigating the recent teen murder spree has gone missing. We're then taken to a garage. A man chains up an unconscious teen and duct tapes her face. Back in the house, the woman is joined by her husband and the two briefly talk about the crimes. The teen in the garage gains her consciousness and realizes that she's been chained to the rear of two cars. The couple walks out of the house and gets inside the cars. As they drive away, the helpless teen is dragged out behind them. The woman sees the victim through her rear mirror, but before she can warn the man, he drives off and the screen blacks out. Through a number of news broadcasts, we're then told about the negative side of technology. How technology has invaded our privacy and made crimes a lot easier by putting all our information out in the open. Next, we're introduced to the protagonist, Jessie. Jessie gets a call from her friend Rachel, who reveals that the man she'd been dating online turned out to be a 40-year-old perv. The two talk some more about it, deciding that they need to stop online dating and then end the call, saying they'll meet soon. The next day, the girl's friend Michael meets up with another one of their friends, Johnny, at school, who appears to be very stressed since he didn't get the football scholarship he'd been working for. Rachel joins the boys and they start talking. Rachel's brother, Neil, comes to her and the two start bickering about some of Neil's private activities which Rachel revealed to their mother. Neil angrily walks away a moment later and the friends are joined by Jessie. Once the boys walk away to their class, Dante, a guy who crushes on Jessie, walks over to her and greets her. As Rachel leaves the two to talk, Dante gives Jessie a rose and offers to walk her to class. He tells her that he's working on his car and will take her on a ride in it once he's done. Next, we're taken to the teens' class, where their professor is lecturing them about the adverse effects of technology, saying it enables a complete stranger to know everything about you. The students pay no heed to what he says, clearly not sharing his hatred for technology, and as soon as the class ends, they all rush out. That night, while Neil is playing a video game, he receives a chain letter from an anonymous person, telling him that he is the first person who links the chain. It instructs him to forward it to 5 people or else he will die. Neil is about to delete it, but Rachel barges into his room and asks to use his computer to write an email. Rachel reads the chain letter and remarks that she needs to send it, saying she can't take the risk. She types in 4 names but Neil chases her away before she can finish writing and send it. She says something mean before heading out, due to which Neil adds her as the 5th person and sends the letter. Johnny gets the letter but deletes it immediately, thinking it's ridiculous. While Jessie, Dante and Michael are sitting in a gaming center, Michael and Jessie receive it. They ask Dante if he got the letter, to which he says he doesn't have a phone, since he's not much into technology. Jessica and Michael forward theirs and tell him that he should check his email once he gets home since he's on the list. When Johnny goes to the gym later, he sees Kevin there, his competitor who had won the football scholarship Johnny so badly wanted. A conversation between the two reveals that Kevin also got the chain letter. After a brief exchange between them, Kevin heads out after indirectly insulting Johnny. After gymming for a while, Johnny goes to get some water. While he's drinking, a black hooded figure slams his head on the fountain, knocking 2 of his teeth out and making him unconscious. The killer then drags his unconscious body to a gym set and starts working on him with his chains. When Dante goes back to his house, he finds the chain letter on his computer. Considering it an ordinary spam message, Dante deletes it. A notification is sent to the killer's computer, telling him about the deleted message. An investigation team arrives at the gym to investigate Johnny's death. Detective Crenshaw, head of the investigation, is told that Johnny had no enemies, which makes the case very confusing. But the chains hung in the gym, he's told, were never seen before. The detective goes over to the chains and sees a link with a barcode on it. Dante goes to meet with a friend who was helping him with his car. He's told that his car is now done and ready for a ride. Dante gets very excited after learning this and gets inside the car, starting to practice how he would ask Jessie for a ride in it. He notices something leaking from the engine and gets out to check. While he's bent over under the engine to see what is leaking, someone cuts the chains holding the engine in place above him, letting it drop over him, crushing him under. A week passes after this, with the detectives still left without a clue about the killer's identity. A conversation between the detectives reveals that Kevin Daniels, Johnny's competitor, has gone missing as well. After a few days off, the teen school reopens. The professor tells his class that they have to complete their paper now that school's back on. While working on her paper about privacy and technology, given by the same professor who hated it, something clicks in Jessie's mind. While talking to all the ranchers in the area in hopes of gathering more information about the barcoded chain link, Detective Crenshaw goes to meet Mr. Bradford. Crenshaw shows him the link and asks if he ever saw someone with such chains before. Bradford says he has seen them before but isn't able to recall where. Thus Crenshaw leaves his card with Bradford, asking him to give him a call if he remembers where he saw them. Jessie pieces together that the chain letter caused the death of her friends. Alarmed, she calls Rachel to tell her about this, but Rachel doesn't pick up the call since she's busy taking a bath. Jessie calls Neil, who was busy gaming at a gaming center, and asks him where Rachel is. Initially, Neil cuts a few jokes about it, but noticing the fear and urgency in Jessie's tone, Neil agrees to meet her at his house. While she's bathing, Rachel becomes suspicious of a possible intruder inside the house. She puts on a gown and goes downstairs to investigate. While tiptoeing around the house, she looks behind her for a moment. She looks back to see the killer standing right ahead of her. She lets out a heart-wrenching scream before the killer whips the chain and the screen blacks out. When Jessie and Neil arrive at the house, they find the cops and the detective there, realizing they're late. Detective Crenshaw pays his condolences to Jessie and asks her why she thought Rachel was in danger. Jessie tells him all about the chain letters and how the ones who didn't forward it died. Detective Crenshaw tells her to forward the message to him so that he can investigate further. Jessie hesitates, saying if she sends it to him, she has to send it to 4 others as well. Crenshaw calms her down and tells her she won't have to worry about it since he'll take care of the killer. The detective then pays his condolences to Neil and leaves. In his office, Detective Crenshaw is met by a new profiler put on the case, Wiggins. Wiggins asks Crenshaw what he thinks about the case, to which Crenshaw says he believes that the chains are the key to the killer since they're always the same and always found on the crime scenes. Seeing the barcodes on the links, Wiggins remarks that using technology to kill must be the strategy of a person who hates it. Through further research, Jessie learns that the killer is using a virus that hacks their devices to track them. That's why he always knows where they are. She asks Michael and Neil to meet her and tells them about it. Feeling very stressed, Neil starts blaming himself for the deaths, saying he was the first link in the chain. Michael tries to calm him down, but Neil forwards a chain letter to him, in order to let him know how it feels to be the cause of others' deaths. Michael gets enraged and attacks Neil. The two start fighting and only stop when Jessie intervenes. Shortly after, Neil gets another chain message, realizing that he's being watched at that very moment. Neil looks at the message in horror and declares that he would keep forwarding it since he doesn't want to die. Saying this, he turns and leaves. That night, while Neil is sitting at his computer, he receives another chain mail. This shocks him and he starts panicking, saying he's forwarded the message to everyone he knows. The messages don't stop and notifications about new chain mails keep pouring in one after the other. Unable to take the torture anymore, Neil deletes the message. It's revealed that the killer had been awaiting this moment, standing right above Neil's roof. As soon as Neil deletes the mail, he attacks. Jessie calls Michael and asks him to forward the message to her so that she can pass it on to Crenshaw. She tells him that Crenshaw will be able to track the killer through it. Michael tells her to be careful and passes the message to her. Next, Detective Crenshaw is seen breaking into an abandoned building as a conversation between him and Bradford is heard in the background. Bradford had called the detective and told him about the place of a late friend of his, who used to brand his chains with barcodes. Thus Crenshaw decided to investigate the place. As Crenshaw is busy investigating the place, his teammate tries to call him and leaves him a message, telling him that the killings are the work of an anti-technology group, technology terrorists, who use barcodes to show how technology ruins individual lives. Detective Crenshaw walks into the building to see numerous chains hanging from the ceiling. Hearing faint screams and grunts, he follows them to another room where he sees a man wrapped up in chains and hung to the ceiling. Shocked, Crenshaw asks him who he is. The person reveals that he is Kevin Daniels, the teen who went missing weeks ago. Crenshaw promises to help him, but as soon as he steps forward, a sensor ahead of him picks the movement and sets Kevin alight. Crenshaw watches helplessly as Kevin burns to his death. The detective then calls his department and asks to speak with Wiggins. However, the officer on the phone tells him that their security system had been hacked. The person claiming to be Wiggins turned out to be an imposter and the actual Wiggins turned out to be dead. The imposter's words ring in Crenshaw's head. A series of flashbacks begins as he remembers how the imposter had talked about the cult hating technology and wanting to kill others using it. The killer shortly appears behind Crenshaw and attacks. Jessie unplugs all her devices and breaks her phone. Michael tries to call her and tells her that he's worried for her since he forwarded the message to her. He asks her to call him back and that he would be at her doorstep first thing in the morning. While Jessie is sleeping, she has a nightmare in which her broken phone starts to ring. She gets up to get it, but as soon as she does, the killer leaps at her through the window. Jessie awakens after this, scared, breathing raggedly. She gets up and gets changed, then goes back to sleep. The next morning, the news from the beginning of the film is broadcasted again, revealing the disappearance of Detective Crenshaw, the lead investigator of the teen's murder spree. The couple is revealed to be the parents of Jesse. As they head out to work, the person chained to the rears of their cars is revealed to be Jessie, who's in this condition since she didn't send out the message to 5 people but only to Crenshaw. Her mother notices her and stops, but her father drives off, pulling her behind and ripping her apart. As the film ends, Detective Crenshaw is shown chained to a table while the killer makes chains. Thanks for watching, guys.